Welcome everyone, this is Viking, and today we're going to cover navigating with the PVI-800. There are two different navigation instruments in the Black Shark. The PVI-800 is down here, and the ABRIS is up here. The ABRIS is obviously the graphical one, and it shows you your moving map. The PVI-800 is more numerically oriented, but it does control the positioning of this heading caret up here. It's also responsible for informing your route-following autopilot, which isn't used much, but it is what gives the route-following autopilot its information. So, to begin with, we're going to cancel the auto-hover. Going to put our heading caret right on the waypoint marker, and we're going to start moving out. The power lines in this particular map are usually about 65 meters tall, so I like to get up to about 75 meters of altitude in order to feel safe that I can just pass over them. We're not going to start off at full speed, but we will accelerate later. Alright, we've got our altitude at 75 meters. We're going to turn on the altitude hold autopilot. And with this switch in the down position, it's radar altitude hold, so it's going to follow the terrain. And that gives us the luxury of taking our eyes off the heads up and going heads down. Now, the first thing you should know about the PVI-800 is that it has a DTA-DH button that will give you different information. If this is off, it just shows you latitude and longitude, which is fine. But over here, it shows the course to your next waypoint, heading of 223. We're at about 223 right there. And then it shows the time in minutes until we reach that waypoint, 3.7 minutes. And the distance, 12.0 kilometers. Now 11.9 kilometers in 3.6 minutes. So that's a useful button to know about. Now, as we are en route to this next waypoint, and I'm just going to adjust the heading here, we're going to program in an extra waypoint. So we're going to flip the switch from Opper to Ent, and then we hit waypoint, and it says that we have 3 waypoints. So we're going to go waypoint 4, and then we always hit 0 first. 0 has a plus over it, and 1 has a minus over it. All of the maps available for DCS World are in the Northern Hemisphere, so plus is the first one. That doesn't, I've clicked it, but it doesn't produce a result. And then the first waypoint we're going to punch in is 42 degrees, and then 14.8 minutes. This is not seconds, this is decimal minutes. And then without having to press any enter buttons or anything like that, we're also going to go plus, and then 0, 4, 2, 3, 7.5, and then the enter button lights up, and we can press it. If we do that, then we can select waypoint 4, and it says that's way off to the left according to the heading caret. We're going to continue to follow to waypoint 1. We're going to fly that circuit as usual. But we've also got an additional waypoint, waypoint 4, that we can go to later. And that waypoint is a small airfield. I don't even think it has ground crew. Because we're using the PVI-800, we can engage route-following autopilot mode. And that will steer us towards the heading caret. And because currently the PVI-800 and the ABRIS agree, we can see that we're almost to that first waypoint. If I switch this to DTA-DH, then we can see that we are 4.5 kilometers from the waypoint. Actually, that's going to be up over the hill. And although our altitude hold will help us climb over hills. That one's a little steep. I'm not too sure how well it's going to handle it at this speed, but I'm going to let it make the attempt, and we'll see what happens. I'm totally hands-off throttle and stick here. Let's see if 75 meters is enough. Okay, it's automatically pitching up to go over the hill. If it's not being aggressive enough, you can just pull back on the stick and overpower the autopilot. That's actually exactly what I'm going to do right here. I'm also going to disengage the route following, because I don't actually know how high these trees are. But now we're over them. And as we head up over the crest of the hill, we're going to find the ground dropping away from us, and as a result, we should be descending. Maybe I have the collective a little too high. And we just passed the waypoint, so we're going to switch to waypoint 2. When altitude hold is on and you use flight director, you get those bars. This means you're above your altitude that you intended. This means below. When the bars are extending up, it means you're too low. And you can disengage altitude hold and re-engage it. And whenever you engage altitude hold, that's your intended altitude as far as the flight computer is concerned. And when you're beneath it, the bars extend up from the flight director bars. And when you're below it, pardon me, when you're above it, the bars extend down from the flight director bars. Now this is some pretty hilly terrain, and I'm not sure that radar altitude hold is the best thing for us at this point. So I'm gonna flip this up to barometric altitude hold. I'm gonna level us off. Level us off. I'm just dropping the collective very gently. And we're level-ish, so altitude hold on, and it'll keep us level at this barometric altitude. As we fly, I'm also going to set another waypoint, except it's not going to be a waypoint per se. It's going to be a nav target. This one is going to be positive 4, pardon me, navigation target 1 is going to be positive 4215.5 and positive 04230.4. Enter. We will come back to that nav target business shortly. The important thing is we've entered it in. Now, by default, and we'll cover this a bit more in the ABRIS section, but by default, the ABRIS works on degrees, minutes, and seconds. The PVI-800 works on degrees, minutes, and decimal minutes, not seconds. If you want them to agree, you can go to Options, Setup, Down, Units, and then Change, and it turns the degree symbol into a decimal. Move down, change degree symbol to a decimal, and if you want, you can also change speed to knots in case you're escorting something like a Huey or something else that prefers knots as its airspeed. And then you can see that your ground speed is indicated in knots. 59 knots, 109 kilometers per hour. I'm just going to correct our flight path here. holding the trimmer in. I like where I'm pointed. I release it. We're good. I think I cranked up the dust a little bit too high on this one, because this is actually starting to look like the desert instead of the Caucasus, but it's alright. It still serves its purpose. Now, we could proceed on to waypoint 3, but the interesting waypoint we entered was waypoint 4. So I'm going to put that one on DHDTA. I see that we are 26 kilometers from it, and I'm going to head straight towards it now. Waypoint 4 was only entered into the PVI-800, so it's not going to appear on the ABRIS. If you create a flight plan in the mission editor, then that flight plan will be entered into both the PVI-800 and the ABRIS, and they will agree with each other. If you make changes in flight, you either have to make the changes to both the ABRIS and the PVI-800, or you have to live with the fact that the two instruments will disagree somewhat. We've accelerated to about 250 kilometers per hour. The Shark tends to top out closer to 300, but I like having a little bit of room to accelerate, because if you go over the maximum speed, then you run the risk of your rotor blades spinning in opposite directions, actually colliding with one another. And because descending rapidly will increase your speed, as one might expect, you want a little bit of a speed buffer. You want to have some space between you and your maximum velocity, just in case you need to dive rapidly and use some ground cover to block a missile coming at you. Normally, the HUD shows our altitude with a little P next to it. When it has a P there, that means that it's radar altitude. When you're above 300 meters, your radar altimeter stops working and you go to barometric altitude. So we are 346 meters above sea level. But if I turn off altitude hold and descend, then suddenly we get back into the radar altitude area. And we see that we are 275 meters above ground level, not above sea level. When you're looking for this information on your steam gauges, the radar altimeter is here, very near 300, and the barometric altimeter is here. At this speed, we will reach our waypoint in 3.8 minutes, because it is 15.5 kilometers away. I'm not even sure. Oh yeah, no, it is. That airfield is shown on the ABRIS. Kvitiri is probably how you pronounce that. It's probably not how you pronounce that, but it's what I'll say. Put this back to the regular lat-long display, and we'll speed up time just a little bit. Uh-oh. Oh, it hung up for a second, but it's okay now. Getting pretty close. And there we are. There's the airfield that we programmed in as a waypoint. It says that it's 1.4 kilometers away. That looks about right to me. Alright, very good. Let's switch to nav target 1. The interesting thing about nav targets is that it shows your distance to it in kilometers at the bottom of the HUD, 10 kilometers. That's one of the benefits of using a nav target instead of a waypoint. I'm going to switch the altitude hold mode down to radar. Going to level us off and turn on altitude hold mode at 250 centimeters. Now that we're just a little over 5 kilometers out, I'm going to switch over to flight director with altitude hold mode off. I'm going to descend a little bit. And I'm going to come to a hover short of actually reaching the nav target. Nav targets are often targets. It's convenient to punch in a nav target if you know where some enemies are. I'm going to try not to gain too much altitude. I'm happy in the range between 150 and 200. And we're 3 kilometers away. And we're going to come to a hover. As we slow, we lose translational lift, so it's important to increase collective substantially. Trim a little bit. And trim a little bit more. And now that we're in a good spot speed-wise, we can engage auto hover. And now, if we turn on the Schval, which we will cover in more detail later, it immediately slews to the navigation target. Now, I know I had some trucks around here. The nav target thing is not that precise because it only takes 1 decimal place of degree minutes. Pardon me, minute. It only takes 1 decimal place of minutes. But it can often get you close enough that you can locate your targets. And we will cover weapons employment in a future video, but do know that your gun can absolutely reach out to 2.7 kilometers. And one other thing worth mentioning is that whatever airfield you take off from is always airfield 1. So if I want to head back to where I came from, I can punch in airfield 1. And head towards it. You need more right rudder as you accelerate. And then back off the right rudder as you reach your cruising speed. And how far away are we? We are 6 kilometers away. And we will reach it in 1.5 minutes. Yeah, boy, that HUD is hard to read without the filter up. Got my nav lights on. I'm going to turn my anti-collision beacon on. We're coming up to some power lines, so I'm going to make sure we get over them. And I'm going to drop the landing gear. I see an airfield coming up, and I'm not going to be too picky about where I set it down. Always be trimming. You do have wheels, so it's fine to have some forward momentum when you touch down, but I like to zero it out as much as possible. Always trim and gently set her down. And that is how we use the PVI-800 and the Black Shark. Cheers everyone, thanks for watching, see you next time.